Welcome everybody to today's session, which is going to be on the power of authority in behavioral science. Now, authority is one of the most potent persuasive principles. It can help people buy from you. It can help clients and customers do what you want them to do, whether it's click a button, open an email, go through to your landing page, interact with them in person. Authority helps you appear credible and it helps you appear like an expert, which then helps people trust and like you and buy from you as well. So it's a really important principle today. I'm gonna give you an overview, and it's the same overview I gave an organization recently in a workshop I did for them. I gave them this workshop. A bunch of people were in there. It was live. And then we did a Q&A at the end, and we did all this brainstorming about how we could apply authority to the problems that they have. Now, obviously, this isn't a live video, so I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough with certain names to keep the company's identity private. I'm going to keep those redacted in this workshop, but I'm going to present it to you and show you some of the good stuff of how you can apply authority in the best way possible to get the results that you want to get. Okay, let's get to it. So here we go, authority bias in behavioral science. And the objectives that I set for this workshop, I'm gonna set them for you as well. And the objectives are to learn how authority affects our decisions and judgments, to look at what not to do, unethical examples. When people learn a little bit about behavioral science or they learn a little bit about persuasion, they have a tendency to just start applying them everywhere and anywhere. And often what can happen is they start leaning into unethical examples where it actually has the reverse effect, and then they're like, well, persuasion and behavioral science isn't actually working for me. I've tried it, but it's because they applied it wrongly. So I'm going to show you where we can draw the line, and I'm going to show you where we can make sure that doesn't affect you. We're going to then look at actual applications of authority in practice as well. But before we start, where might we experience or see an authority figure? If we think about authority in general, I want you to just pause for just 10 seconds. Just have a little bit of a think. An example of an authority figure would, of course, be a doctor, right? Authority in medicine, okay? So just pause for just a few seconds, have a think, where might you see an authority figure? To tell you the truth, authority figures are absolutely all around us. It might be doctors, it might be professors, judges, CEOs, police officers. People that are older than us as well, people that are taller than us. One of the people in the workshop actually shouted out at me, which I thought was a really good example of authority as well. But to tell you the truth, sometimes it's not just the title of the person, it's how they look as well. It might be a person wearing robes. It might be a person wearing a lab coat as well, because we have this tendency to just make this shortcut and see them as an authority figure. Do you get it? Yeah, cool. Let's move on. So, what is authority bias then? Well, authority bias is a cognitive bias where we are more influenced by the opinions and judgments of authority figures because we perceive them as experts. So there's a famous study on this actually, and it's actually one of the most fundamental and controversial studies in behavioral science, and it is the Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiment completely changed everything that we know about compliance and obedience, and the study was to test if they could get a volunteer to administer deadly electric shocks to a person that they've never met before, just because an authority figure tells them to. This is super, super interesting, this study, and as well, highly controversial as well. It wouldn't be able to be done today. Okay, so in 1963, the world was trying to process the horrors of World War II. The big question was why? Like, how could normal people commit the atrocities? Was it a unique character flaw in those specific people? Was it a psychological trigger, or was it something within all of us that can push normal people to commit unthinkable acts just because we are told to? So to find out, this researcher called Milgram placed an advert in a newspaper, and he recruited 40 ordinary people, postmen, engineers, laborers, just regular people like you and me, and he brought them to Yale University, and he told them a lie. He says, "We are conducting a study on memory and learning." But that was a lie. He wasn't testing memory. He was actually testing obedience. And so the experiment involved 3 different people. It involved the volunteer, this person on the left, the normal person who thinks they are there to help with the science experiment. This is the person who's been brought in, who's been tricked, right? It had the learner in the middle. So this is an actor who is strapped to a chair in the next room. And then it had the experimenter, an authority figure standing in the room wearing a lab coat. So remember, this person here is the only person who isn't involved in the experiment. They don't know that this is actually testing something else. They think it's testing their memory. So if we look here, the volunteer, this is the person who is unaware this is a real experiment, is told to ask questions to the learner next door, who is an actor. And every time the learner in the other room gets a question wrong, the volunteer must press an electric shock button to electrocute them. And for every wrong answer, the voltage increases. So this is for context, right? So 300 volts is, I didn't know anything about electric before I actually studied this experiment, funnily enough, but 300 volts is actually dangerous to a person and can potentially kill a person. 450 volts is you're getting fried by that point, you're toast, okay? These electric shocks are actually fake. The actor in the chair wasn't really being hurt, but the volunteer believed they were hurting them, okay? So the experiment starts, the actor keeps getting answers wrong because he's been told to get answers wrong, and the volunteer keeps increasing the voltage of the electric shock. They get to 150 volts, right? The volunteer hears the actor screaming in pain through the wall. The volunteer turns to the man in the lab coat and he says, I don't want to do this anymore. But the man in the lab coat just says, you must continue this experiment. They get to 315 volts. The actor in the other room goes silent. He pretends to have passed out. The volunteer panics and says, he isn't responding. We should stop the experiment. We should stop the experiment. The man in the lab coat just replies, the experiment must continue. So here is a question for you. Psychologists predicted that only 1% of people would go all the way to the end of this experiment. Mostly the people who had something a little bit wrong with them. They might have been psychopaths. They might have, something wasn't quite right with them. They might have enjoyed that the person in the other room was in pain, and only 1% of people will go to the other end of the experiment. But what percentage of these ordinary people do you think would have continued to press the electric shock button to the fatal level of 450 volts? Have a think for a second. Psychologists predicted it'd only be 1%. The results showed that actually 65% went all the way to the end of the experiment where the person was toast. 100% of volunteers went all the way to 315 volts, which was the point the person stopped responding, was told to stop responding. So they were shouting, ow, ow, ow first, and then they stopped responding at 315. 100% of people went all the way to there, no matter how painful the screams were coming from the person. And this is all because a person in a lab coat was telling them to. So some of the key takeaways from Milgram's experiment: obedience wasn't caused by aggression or sadism. It was driven by ordinary people who were struggling to defy a command. So the pressure to comply with a legitimate authority figure overrode the participants' fundamental moral belief against harming others. So, when there's a big experiment like this and it shows a significant result, that's kind of odd. It always gets tested again, and it gets tested again to prove that it wasn't just a one-off, to see if actually we can get a different result this time and prove that that first experiment was incorrect. So they tested this same experiment again because it was only done on men at first, and they thought, well, maybe women wouldn't react like this, and they found the same result. They tested it in different cultures. They found the same result. They even tested it in hospitals where nurses were told to administer fatal doses of medicine by a fake doctor, and they complied, right? And the takeaway is that we are conditioned from childhood to listen to authority. And we're trained that following the lead of a legitimate figure is the correct social behavior. And when a trusted authority gives a command, our brains actually stop thinking critically and stop evaluating the situation, and we simply act instead. What's really interesting as well is this research, when we talk about this research and when it was predicted what this research would do, people would always look at this research and think they won't act like this. They'd think to themselves, I wouldn't act like that, and why would I just randomly shock a person? And truth be told, that's not what the data actually shows. Okay, so you have a good understanding about authority now and what the base experiments were about, but let's have a look at unethical uses of authority. So we need to look at how this trigger is used to manipulate people in certain industries, and the industry that I was presenting this to was the financial one. It was the debt industry. So can we think of organizations where authority is maybe used negatively? You have to scroll on social media for 2 or 3 minutes before you will get some sort of video of a person talking about their accomplishments, authority. They will, be showing their credentials before they're trying to pitch to you. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to be mindful that some people might be actually making that up. So for this one, in the UK, we have this problem with clone firms pretending to be debt charities. So they're pretending that they're helping people with solving their debt, because this is the industry that I presented to. And what actually happens is these scam firms actually copy the names of places. So for instance, a charity is the British Heart Foundation. All right, that is helping people with, heart disease, heart problems, and all things like this. They might call themselves the Heart Foundation for the British. So it targets those keywords on Google, and then they pop up, people get confused, make the wrong donations to different places, right? And so people end up trusting those organizations, and the FCA over time, which is the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, has warned about these firms as well. Next one, we have a creditor in the UK. This is an organization that lends people money. And Wonga used authority to manipulate. They sent out 45,000 threatening letters to customers asking for payment of whatever money they owed to them. But these letters looked like they came from real solicitors. In fact, they used badges, they used legal titles, they used jargon to panic people into paying them back. And this was so severe that the FCA, that's the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the governing body in the UK of anything financial, ordered them to pay 2.6 million in compensation. So I'm trying to tell you this to let you know that not only is it unethical to manipulate people or to use these wrongly, but you can also face serious consequences if you do these things as well. 2.6 million in compensation, that's crazy, okay? So when done right, authority actually builds confidence. When it's used ethically, authority helps people make informed decisions. But when it's used wrongly, it misleads, it pressures, and it harms people into relying on us and trusting us as well as experts. So our goal, as always, as influencers on this channel, if you've been watching for a little while, if you're interested in behavioral science, if you're interested in persuasion, is to always offer clarity and expertise, help our clients, our customers overcome uncertainty that way. It's never to intimidate, it's never to falsely influence, it's never to put your credentials up to say that you're a person when you're not. Is to genuinely inform people that you are an authority figure. And when you do this right, people will view you as an expert. Okay, so now we're going to look at how some tiny behavioral science changes using authority can actually lead to huge positive client or customer outcomes and impacts. And this is from actual research. So insight 1. This is taken from an actual campaign that we worked on with this organization. And they used to send an SMS out to people. An SMS, and the idea was to get them to click a link in this SMS to take them through to a landing page. And what they initially said was, here is a link you asked for. This gives you access to free and impartial advice. Available 24/7, need support, our advisors can help, go to this link here. And that was the initial SMS. There's nothing really wrong with that, except they didn't really talk about what type of advisors we're sending them to. And all they did was they added in the word expert advisors rather than just saying advisors. And this resulted in an extra 4% of people who clicked. Now, 4% might sound small, but if you put this across hundreds, thousands of people, there is a big number in difference in terms of people who go to that landing page, all just by changing just a few words there. Insight 2. This is taken from some of the people who taught me about influence and persuasion and behavioral science. They worked with a software company called Umbraco, and they added a line to their landing page stating that they were a market leader and then high performer. You see these little badges down here. And because of that, they got an extra 5.3% leads there just by adding those little badges. Okay, really interesting stuff. Just those tiny changes which we all can make at any given time. Insight 3. There is a company here, a marketing website featuring testimonials. Now, originally, they had photos of the people who were giving the testimonials. And this is common in marketing to tell you to put the photos of people with the big smiling faces, which does matter, except if you look at the organizations the people are working for here, Visa, Wall Street Journal, Hewlett-Packard, these are big names that carry a lot of authority. So it would make more sense in this situation to actually just include the logos instead of the people's faces, because the logos are more recognizable and carry more authority than these people's faces. So that's exactly what they did. They changed the people's faces to the actual logos of the well-known companies instead. And guess what? They got 100% click-through rate to the different videos down here just by changing those little logos. So some key takeaways for authority is authority helps people trust us, especially when they are feeling unsure. This is very important. When people are feeling maximum uncertainty or maximum, they're just unsure what action to take or unsure whether they should go with you, chuck in a little bit of authority. It works best when we highlight our expertise and show that we are actually trustworthy. So in your business, you can apply this by featuring experience, credentials, regulation clearly and consistently, borrowing authority from respected third parties, framing advice coming from qualified professionals, and placing authority cues near key decisions to reduce hesitation. And when done right, authority makes it easier for people to say yes to the help we offer. And I like to try and, at the end of these presentations, capture exactly what the principle is in a sentence. And so the sentence today is, when people feel uncertain, using authority bias helps them get over it, okay? So that is the authority bias there. Again, this is a super potent, powerful principle that's often misused, but if you can apply it right, and you can apply it correctly in your sales, your marketing, even when you sat down with a person. I've used it before if I'm doing some sort of deal where I'm meeting a client face-to-face, or a potential customer face-to-face, and they don't know, they know they need the solution, they're just unsure whether they need to trust me, right? I will tell them my credentials. I would say we can apply behavioral science to what you're doing. I've been working with this subject for various different companies for a long time now. I've got credentials in psychology. I have generated millions in revenue for various different businesses. Here's the proof of that. This is all authority. And when people can hear that, they're like, actually, I'm less uncertain about you now. And they move from uncertainty to certainty on that I'm the person they want to work with. This doesn't just work in face-to-face deals. It works with building trust anywhere, of course, because it's built into us. Think back to that experiment there. It's a really important lesson. I'll link at the end another huge behavioral science principle that can help you get good results as well. It's how to properly use scarcity and urgency. It's very much like this presentation here. So if you enjoyed this deep dive, please go and check that out. I'll link it on the screen right now. Take care.